It's a joint meeting of the northern governors and key traditional rulers from the northern states. And the meeting place is the government house in Kaduna State. The Sultan of Sokoto and the governor of Kaduna State raised concern over the insecurity situation in the north.
And I believe we're always ready to partner. I'd like to thank some of the governors that we've known, or even all the governors who have done a lot to unravel the problem of security in our various states.
Our region faces serious challenges. The economic situation in the country has affected us. The insecurity has destroyed rural economies, and many other challenges about federalism stare us in the face.
After several hours of meeting behind closed doors, the governors resolved that the call by their southern counterparts that the presidency be zoned to the south is unconstitutional. According to them, the 1999 Constitution as amended states that an elected president must meet the constitutional requirements, which include scoring majority votes and also score at least 25% of the votes cast in 2/3 of the states of the Federation. And nowhere is zoning allowed in the Constitution.
The forum unanimously condemned the statement by the Southern Governors Forum that the presidency must go to the south. The statement is quite contradictory with the provision of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999 as amended, that the elected president shall A. score the majority votes, B. score at least 25% of the votes cast in 2/3 states of the Federation. C. In the case of run-up, simple majority will win the election.
The governors also react to the controversy on who collects value-added tax, a matter which is currently before the Supreme Court.
The Northern State Governors Forum considered the ongoing national debate on collection of value-added tax, VAT. As responsible leaders, while we are concerned by the fact that the matter is sub judice, we, however, for the purposes of educating the public, make the following observations. A. The judgment of the Federal High Court calls to question the constitutionality of VAT, withholding tax, education tax, Niger Delta Development Commission, National Information Technology Development Agency, 13% derivation, National Economic Development Council, and many other currently levied and collected by the Federal Government of Nigeria and the Federal Inland Revenue Service. B. Rivers and Lagos State Government had enacted their own VAT laws, and the Southern Governors Forum have expressed support for this course of action.
It now remains to be seen how their counterparts in the south will respond to these strong views from the Northern Governors Forum.
Two gentlemen join us this morning to look at the issues around the resolutions of the Northern Governors Forum. Ebolu Adegboruwa, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, as well as Abubakar Bili Tafa Balewa, who is a politician and civil rights activist. Both of them join us virtually, both Ace from Lagos and Abubakar from Kaduna. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning in this conversation. Well, let me begin with you, Mr. Ebolu Adegboruwa. This conversation seems endless. First, there is the political end of it. Then there is the constitutional end of it. Should come from the north, should come from the south, must come from the south, and various positions depending on who is speaking. And first of all, what's your reaction to this controversy?
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning, Nigeria. First of all, is to please emphasize that Their Excellencies, the governors of the northern states, discussed several other national issues which have been overshadowed by the issue of zoning. And we must commend Their Excellencies in their resolve to collaborate with the federal government of Nigeria and the security agencies to wipe out bandits and insurgents. And they also discuss matters relating to improvement of power, electricity in particular, and they are concerned about the need to form national cohesion in order to achieve peace and stability in the nation. I think it's just unfortunate that the issue of power shift and rotation seems to have overshadowed the meeting of Their Excellencies. And I think that probably may not have been the intention. So I must say that I commend Their Excellencies on their resolve to tackle the main problem we are facing in Nigeria now, which is insecurity. But unfortunately, maybe because of improper legal counsel, it may have been that Their Excellencies overlooked certain provisions of the Constitution of Nigeria and even the constitution of the political parties that they belong to before making the categorical statement that zoning and rotation is illegal. Because when we examine various sections of our own constitution, that's the 1999 constitution, it's clearly written, in several portions, especially in chapter 2, that the framers of the constitution had envisaged that we were going to get to this stage in our national life. And so enough provisions have been made to accommodate national cohesion, to carry everybody along in governance, and to ensure unity, equality, and justice in the distribution of power and offices. And in particular, I will refer you to Section 14 of the 1999 Constitution, in particular Section 14.3, which talks about the need for there to be a spread in the distribution of offices, in the composition of government, in such a way that not a dominance of a particular state, ethnic group, or tribe, should have that dominance in terms of the sharing of power. So in that regard, it is meant that we should promote national cohesion, national unity, and then a sense of loyalty amongst all the ethnic groups and indeed the geopolitical zones that form the Federation of Nigeria. So when Their Excellencies were reeling out their position to say that rotation is contrary to the Constitution of Nigeria, the section they referred to in particular only talked about election, the mode of election, how a person can be elected as the president of Nigeria to secure 25%, to be able to have majority votes. That has to do with election. But the Constitution itself, before that provision, has already envisaged that there must be that national spread. There must be that national balance in such a way that a particular ethnic group or a particular tribe is not seen as dominating. And so if you look at the interpretation of that section of the Constitution, I'm talking about Section 14 sub 3, it will be a little insensitive when you consider that maybe, for instance, we say President Muhammadu Buhari is from the northern side of Nigeria. And then maybe when it's time for election in 2023, having spent 8 years and exhausted the maximum two-term period, what Section 14 envisage is that you will have to balance the power in such a way that other sectors of the Nigerian society will not have a sense of marginalization. And I think that's what is meant by rotation and zoning. And it's not anything new, Ayo. It's been in the Nigerian political system. Indeed, when I did my own research, I found out that the National Party of Nigeria way back in the 70s, when we started constitutional democracy after military rule, in Article 21 of the Constitution of the National Party of Nigeria, it was specifically entrenched that the system of governance shall achieve national cohesion in such a way as to balance power in zoning offices. And that has been the case even after this particular republic in 1999. The People's Democratic Party, in Article 7 of its own constitution, specifically stated that it would adhere to the principle of zoning of elective offices between the various regions in Nigeria. And even in the APC constitution, that's the All Progressive Congress, Article 7 also specifically states that the party will promote national unity. And the reason why I say all this is that, when you have come to a society where the system of governance does not guarantee proportional representation, it is the elite that is leading Nigerians to this agitation. Otherwise, ordinarily, nobody should bother about where a president should come from, whether he's from the north, whether he's from the south.
Well, Mr. Adegborougha, you began, my apologies, just a moment. You began by telling us that indeed, a number of issues were discussed by the northern governors, and, quite rightly so, but we just wanted to start with this one, and we're going there. But let me also take the first initial comments of Mr. Tafawa Balewa this morning on the same issue. You have listened to the northern governors, you have listened to the southern governors, and you have also listened to Mr. Adegborougha on the same issue and the constitutionality or otherwise of the issues that have been raised. How do you react? Can you hear me, Mr. Tafawa Balewa? Oh dear, I'm not sure that you can hear us yet, but we'd like to take your own comments as well from joining us from Kaduna, Mr. Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, Mr. Abubakar Billy Tafawa Balewa. He's a politician and rights activist joining us from Kaduna. As soon as we have proper connection, we would like to hear your own views as well. But in the meantime, let me come back to you, Mr. Adegborougha. So, from where you sit, I mean, given that the members of both political parties are in the Northern Governors Forum and the Southern Governors Forum, and they form the majority of the people who are elected into various offices across all states all over the nation. And this principle is there in their constitution, principle of zoning, not just for the national party and all of those and national offices, but even states and local government offices. So what then do you see to be the problem?
Well, thank you very much. Like I stated, I think ordinarily, nobody should be concerned about the origin of the president of a nation if governance follows a particular principle in which there is proportional representation, appointments are based on national cohesion and merit, and then when people get into office, they're able to perform and represent virtually every sector of the society. Nobody will bother about whether you are a Christian, whether you are a Muslim, whether you are from the south or you are from the north. But because of the way in which the elites have continued to govern us in a way in which it only accords with their own personal interests, everybody then wants to have a sense of a taste of national positions in a way to balance their own understanding of what power is all about. So I think that if we all rally around as a nation to ensure that we achieve common governance, good governance, we achieve infrastructure, we achieve democratic system of governance, nobody will actually care. But for us, as the position we are in Nigeria now, it will be totally insensitive for their excellencies from the northern states to say that given the experience that we have had in the past, the precedents that have been created, for them to insist that, power will not shift. I would like to take you back to 2006, Ayo. In the same place where the Northern governors held their meeting yesterday, a meeting was also held of the Northern governors in August 2006. That meeting was chaired by Governor Abdullahi Adamu, who was then governor of Nasarawa State in 2006. And they insisted, on power shift, on zoning, on rotation, and that there should be power shift from the south to the north. And I think virtually all political entities supported them at that time, because it would have been sensitive for the south to have produced General Olusegun Obasanjo for 8 years, and then expect to also retain power, for another 8 years. And I think that was what led to that understanding. And there's another committee being headed by General Abdul Salami Abubakar, whether I think it's National Peace Committee or some name like that. There's been some understanding reached through that committee, which has become like a consensus between the political elite that, the principle of zoning between the south and the north should be maintained. And it's not anything new. Within our own profession, Nigerian Bar Association, for instance, we have adopted that policy, and it has helped us in the election of our president and our national officers, so that you could always predict that after the tenure of Mr. Olumide Akpata, who has performed so wonderfully, we expect the president of NBA to come from the north. There's no controversy about that. It has helped us to achieve national unity and cohesion. And I think it will be insensitive, indeed, in our experience, in our political life, to say that after 8 years of President Muhammadu Buhari, then presidency should also retain in the north, because that will violate Section 14 of our Constitution in terms of spreading the government of the federation such that a particular sector will not have dominance of offices.
I'm tempted to inquire about the NBA's arrangement with zoning and what happened. The last president and this president are from the south. And you wonder if there was an issue around that. But maybe we'll take that on some other time. But while we work on getting Mr. Tafawa Balewa back, by the way, he's the eldest son of the first and only Prime Minister of Nigeria. So it'll be quite interesting to get his views. But Mr. Adegboruwa, so you've referenced the elites, and I'm curious really to explore that. Do you think that the views of the southern governors, the northern governors, actually reflects the views of the people whom they lead, whom they represent? And I mean the everyday Nigerian, you and I. Do you think this is a reflection of what the people are yearning for at this time?
Thank you, Ayo. I'm sorry. Yes, I do not have any doubt in my mind that the positions of both the northern and southern governors do not represent the interests of the masses of the people of Nigeria. That's why I kept using the word elite. Governance in Nigeria, as we have it now, is only in the interest of those politicians who are in power. Because when you get to the average Nigerian, hunger has no definition in terms of where you come from. The masses are hungry. Poverty has no definition. There's poverty in the land like never before. Darkness has no definition. Virtually all parts of the country is experiencing some blackout or the other. So when we talk about power rotation, it's only to fuel the greed of the elite, in terms of their own positional interests. But when you talk about representing the masses of our people in terms of deliverables, in terms of good governance, the masses in Lagos, Kaduna, Kano, Enugu really do not care about who occupies office, so long as you have the interests of the people at heart. There's good governance, there's democracy, there is infrastructure. People are able to go to universities, at affordable rate. People can go to the hospitals and get drugs. People can travel. There's security around the nation. You can move around and sleep with your eyes closed. Whoever occupies office and able to achieve all these, I'm sure the masses will generally not be bothered about whether you are an Hausa man or a Yoruba man or an Igbo man, or whether you're a Christian or a Muslim. But talking about the elite generally, they have generally built this consensus amongst themselves in terms of sharing power. And I think they should adhere to that policy in the interest of national unity and national cohesion, because our constitution is against sectional dominance, as I've referred to you in section 14 of the Constitution.
So the challenge now is there. I mean, we have the Southern Governors Forum, we have the Northern Governors Forum, but we don't quite have the Northern People's Forum or the Southern People's Forum, where the people can, as it were, also state their position, release a communique, have some sort of meeting, because essentially they've elected governors and leaders to, voice their concerns per time. But from what you say, there is a disconnect, and I think it's quite important to find out from you how we can connect that, that disconnect, as it were, because if we carry on like this, you wonder what the future holds. So how can we really link the yearnings of the people with what the leaders go out there to pronounce and say, okay, this is the position, not just our position, but indeed the position and the yearnings of the people?
I think that generally we have not been this divided as a people, and it's quite unfortunate. But I think that in going to project the views of the people they represent, the governors, either of the South or of the North, ought to have sufficient consultations with their people. And I think the Southern governors made it clear, especially on the issue of open grazing. You will have seen that after the declarations in Asaba, virtually all the houses of assembly of the southern states, at least majority of them, have proceeded to pass laws to back up that declaration, which shows that there is indeed support by the representatives of the people for such declarations. And I think it's the same thing with the northern governors. In terms of the issue of fighting insecurity, you cannot fault them. In terms of getting themselves to be so united, to partner with the security agencies, and also to kick against arbitrary judicial proceedings, which seems to promote unfettered freedom for those who have been accused of one insurgency or the other. So to that extent, you believe that when those who have been elected into office come together to voice an opinion, it should have been based on consultations with their people, either through the House of Assembly of the states, or indeed some kind of consultancy through public hearing. And so it is deemed for us generally that when they speak, they will be speaking on behalf of the people. But the experience, like I said, has always been to the contrary, in the sense that at the end of the day, whether within the southern governors or indeed the northern governors, the interest that they represent is that of their stomach. The interest that they represent is that of their immediate families and their own business concerns. But by and large, it's a democratic system and we have no choice. There's no way to remove them except when election comes.
Contestable, Mr. Adegboruwa, when you say, the interest that they are supporting or gunning for is that of their stomachs. They were elected by people to perform a particular function and consequently expected, as you said, concerning one issue, to speak for their people. So I guess the jury is out there on whether or not. But then there is Section 15 of the Constitution. You cited 14, but then there is this one, Section 15, sub 2 of the Nigerian Constitution, as amended, that says national integration shall be actively encouraged, whilst discrimination on the grounds of place of origin, sex, religion, status, ethnic or linguistic association or ties shall be prohibited. But I'm interested more in the first part that says national integration shall be actively encouraged. The question here is how? I asked this question against the backdrop of the controversy around the VAT as well and other issues supporting it. Well, perhaps the framers of the VAT law in 1993 envisaged that there is a need to support other states and consequently enacted that law so that, the needful would be done and support other states who may not be as well endowed as others. So in terms of the VAT law, would you say that the framers of the Constitution considered that such issues would arise, and consequently the VAT law was enacted to perform that function? Or you think it is neither here nor there, because the position of one or two of the governors is it is the states that are supposed to collect VAT?
Thank you, Ayo. But clearly, the intention of the framers of Section 15 of the Constitution in promoting national integration is what we generally refer to as true federalism. In which case, you have a situation whereby the federal becomes like a coordinating unit, and then it's used as a means of galvanizing the various other sectors of the federation, such as the states and the local government. So it was never envisaged that the federal should become so powerful as to be the one distributing resources to the other coordinating units, such as the states and local governments, whereby governors go to Abuja cap in hand every month to ask for bailout, or the revenue allocation and fiscal revenue sharing formula is based on some federal control. So in that regard, the VAT law is something that you look at its origin, because the Constitution is clear on the powers of the federal, the powers of the states, and the powers of the local government. And so it's divided in the fifth schedule of the Constitution into the exclusive legislative list, the concurrent list, and the residual list. And so on matters in which the federal government will claim power to legislate or indeed make laws or policy, must be those that are clearly stated in the exclusive legislative list. And value-added tax is not there, with all due respect. And that's why I think the states have taken it upon themselves to, first of all, go to court. Rivers State went to court. And it was not an ex parte hearing. The federal government was represented, and there was a judgment on the merits, which is now on appeal. And so when people have taken due process of law to ventilate their grievances, we must commend them. And I think that's why I said I commended their excellencies, the northern governors, in terms of their resolve to agree that the legal process should determine what should happen to the value-added tax. Since it's already a matter that is...
Mr. Adegboruwa, just 1 second. We need to take a break now, but before we do that, I'd like to take the first comments of Mr. Tafawa Balewa, just to establish that he's also joining the conversation. So, Mr. Tafawa Balewa, Mr. Adegboruwa has said quite a lot, but, concerning the issue of rotation of presidency from the north to the south and all of that. One of his own major position on that, as far as he's concerned, is based on Section 14 sub 3, that there shouldn't be dominance of any section of the country. Somehow the Constitution already envisages that there should be rotation of political offices, including the presidency, among other things that he has said, which you unfortunately have missed. How do you react to this?
And good morning. Well, you see, this issue about rotation or what have you, to me, it's just pure politics. And in Nigeria today, we have lots of other issues that we should be concerned about than the presidency. But of course, like the northern governors have said, I mean, there's nowhere in the Constitution that says that there is a rotation. And mind you, this rotation is a gentleman's agreement, and I do agree with it. I totally agree with it, but it's not given on a platter. I mean, we need to see people who are proactive, people who have the capacity, the capability to lead this country, coming to my own area now and seeking for my vote. But I mean, what is happening today is a sham. Northern governors, southern governors will meet and say, no, you must give presidency to this zone and that. It's not done anywhere. To me, that's just laziness. These people should move out. I mean, the three southern presidents we have had in this country, well, the two of them were elected and were served, Jonathan and Obasanjo. They were all massively voted from the north here. So that goes to show you it's not a matter of which region you come from. The person is more paramount. Show yourself, not just being a common or a clan leader or a tribal leader. You have to show the Nigerians in you that you are capable. You know what is happening in Maiduguri to Bayelsa. You know what's happening in Port Harcourt to Taraba. You should be up and doing to be a leader in this country. And again, our problem is more of economics than politics. They're just hitting the system. These ones will say, no, it has to be from my zone. What has that got to do with
Mustafa Balewa, it would sound to me, it sounds to me like you're saying that people should pay a little more attention to the things that their leaders are saying. But we'll get more of that from you when we return from this break. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Well, Mr. Billy Tafawa Balewa, it sounds to me like you're saying the people ought to pay more attention to what their leaders are saying. Are you saying by any chance that the people have been docile?
Not really docile. You see, in Nigeria, everyone is shortchanged. I've always said this. The South, the North, the East, the West, we're all shortchanged. And the only way we can remedy the situation is not just picking a leader from this part of the country. No, choosing a leader who can fix our problem. I can imagine after 61 years of independence in Nigeria today, we've had unity schools, we've had the NYSC, and so many intervention schemes to bring about the people together. Yet we are still in our local and tribal courts, which is wrong. I do agree. I'm a proponent of power rotation or power shift, whatever you may call it. In my state, that's why we are having now. Since 1999, it has been one part of the state that has been ruling. And we now said, no, it shouldn't be so. It should go around. But you know, you don't just dash it. You have to have the people who have the capacity and the capability to come out and showcase themselves. It's not done freely. The southern Nigeria, I think there are competent people in the southern part of this country who are good and ready to rule this country. But they should come forward and sell themselves. You don't just dash leadership just like that. And again, we need to deepen this conversation because, I mean, like I told you, the major problem we have in this country is economy. But right now, politics is taking the major part of it. And we must make sure the next election we put in a leader who is a modern man and also someone who can fix the economy. Politics, forget it. It doesn't matter if it's a Yoruba man, Igbo man, Hausa man, Ibibio man, and whoever rules this country, so long as he's competent and can do the job. Yes.
There are a few contradictions that I've heard, I mean, in the course of this broad conversation, that is, not just in this one we're having on the show, but over time, ever since that, you know, the Asaba declaration, and then the one in Lagos, and then the latest one in Enugu for the southern governors, that is, and then followed by the northern governors forum's resolutions. And it's the fact that it sounds as though people say, well, there's a gentleman's agreement, okay? So there's an agreement that there will be, or there should be rotation, but they say that the southern governors should not demand for it. So the question will be, what exactly is the message here? Is it that you shouldn't say must, even though, yes, you actually should have it, or I really don't quite get it.
Exactly, you shouldn't say must. It's not a must thing. You see, this is a sign of weakness for me. I think the best, and I mean, I have given you an example of Obasanjo. This was someone who came out of the prison and rallied around Nigerians and won. Abiola, this was someone who went around Nigeria. He knew everybody. He knew everyone in the state. Goodluck Jonathan was vice president. It was easy for him to go in through there and then become. What do you want now if you said, okay, now move it to the south? Do you mean that it's only the southerners that will elect the president and just bring it to us? No, it's not done like that. I mean, in all major, societies in the world, people need to come forward and now aspire. I wonder when you have leaders who have alliances in all the 36 states of the country, we need to have a leader like that who can call 1, 2, 3 people in this state and knows that they are his alliances. But when we have just regional bigots who feel that, yes, it must come to my zone, it's only when you take it to my zone that I will now wrestle for it. We need thorough and true Nigerians, for God's sake. Come on, we've been bleeding for all this while. We need to have leaders who can fix things right. And for me, like I told you, I'm not a tribalist. I believe that Nigeria is for all of us. And we need to have leaders who can move the country forward, not just leaders who will move their region or their state forward. And if we don't get that now, I'm sorry for Nigeria.
So for you, the challenge is the language, the wording must. But let me take this back to Mr. Ebolu Adegborua and get his thoughts on that particular one. So we've seen a trajectory. In Lagos, the wordings of the southern governors was that, you know, the next president should emerge from the southern region. That was when they met in Lagos in July. And fast forward to September the 16th when the governors met in Enugu. The wording changed to the next president of Nigeria must come from the southern part of the country. And, you know, based on Mr. Tafawa Balewa's submissions, that this is a gentleman's agreement. So it's naturally expected that power should shift to the south. Are you concerned about the wording, or you just think this is the southern governors trying to enforce the gentleman's agreement so their heads are not shaved behind their back?
Oh, I do completely agree with my colleague, Mr. Tafawa Balewa, you know, that good governance should be the primary consideration for determining leadership. And competence should also play a dominant role in that regard. So to that extent, I think it's correct to say to encourage laziness and mediocrity if you just automatically agree that, you know, you produce. You know, so to that extent, it is correct to say, you know, notwithstanding that there may have been a gentleman's agreement for power to shift to the south, the people of the north are correct to insist that you bring out your best, you know, and ensure that whoever occupies that office, either from the south or from the north, is able to rally around everybody. Because, like I said, Kayode, the major word that is used in Section 14 is to command national loyalty, to promote national unity. And so whether you're from the south or from the north, when you get to power, it's what you do with the power that should matter. So to that extent, I agree with you that the southern governors should probably, you know, indeed employ lobbying, employ reaching out in terms of what they want to achieve in relation to their demand for power shift. I don't think it's something that you say you get on a platter. But indeed, as it is in Nigeria, from what I have said, it is supported by the Constitution. It is supported by the Constitution of the political parties. It is supported by precedent. It is already an agreement that is in place, and there's no reason to depart from it. But maybe the manner of achieving that is what I agree with my colleague. The southern governors probably will need it.
Okay, the connection is getting a little sketchy there. Mr. Adegborua, we'll try to reconnect with you.
And promote national unity.
Okay, thankfully we have you. Just quickly, so I need to find out, is there anything wrong in, you know, having a gentleman's agreement that says, you know, for this period of time, you'll have this, and then for the period following, it will come back perhaps between me and you. So I say for this length of time, this is what will happen with you, and then I will take it on from there. And when it's nearing my own time, I come out to say, well, I must have it. Is it wrong to follow up with that kind of statement? Perhaps a reminder, an enforcement of the agreement. And who knows, do you think maybe the southern governors have seen maybe a trend that looks like this gentleman's agreement will not work or will be forced out of our hands? Do you think there's anything wrong in following up?
Well, I don't know the minds of their excellencies in the Southern Governors Forum that led to the employment of the word must and shall, or to make it mandatory. But like I said, I mean, if you have a right in law, you are entitled to demand for it. But like Mr. Abubakar pointed out, that right is not achievable on the platter. You have to probably reach out to other people that you are making that demand from to explain to them the need for the respect for that mutual agreement that has existed. And then the second point I made, which is important, is that you don't proceed on that right to some kind of mediocrity. You must ensure that you bring your best, and that when your best gets here, it represents the interest of every other person. I'm sure their excellencies on the Northern Governors Forum would probably go back into history and based on the legal positions that have been profiled this morning and rethink their view to insist that indeed power should not shift from the north to the south will be probably insensitive at this time.
Well, despite the fact that, as you quoted from Section 14 of the Constitution, the federal government shall be composed in the affairs of government shall be carried out in such a manner as to command national loyalty. I wonder how that command will happen. But let me take this back to Mr. Tafawa Balewa. We have also mentioned, just before we were able to connect with you earlier, the issue of the value-added tax. That's also been a controversy between the northern governors and the southern governors. Do you see that something, that should be handled at that level? Yes, it is sub judice. It's a case that's already in court, but conversations around it, still seems to continue. What is your own take on all of that conversation?
Well, on the issue of VAT, it's really good. We're doing the conversation now because, like the Lagos and Rivers State, who felt that they needed to get more based on what they were able to collect. But I mean, this VAT issue is simple. The Section 40 of the VAT Act stipulates that 15% of the revenue collected in VAT goes to the federal government. 50% goes to the states. 35% goes to the local governments. And mind you, 20% of the VAT share is based on derivation. Now, I think this whole thing came up because Kano, who seems to, I think, raise about 2.8 billion, was given that same amount. What of Bayelsa, that raised less than, I think, 1.9 and got more, or Ikiti? I mean, this thing we should, I've always said that the problem with Nigeria is that we bring politics into everything. I'm not saying that it is a perfect arrangement in sharing. Yes, we can look at it and see how better we can do to share the revenue. And besides, I've never seen, there's nowhere in the world where the soft nationalities collect VAT. Nowhere in the world. Nowhere. It's the federal unit that collects the VAT and share it. If there's any problem in the VAT collection or perhaps in the sharing, they should all come to the table and see how better they can do that. But now Rivers have instituted a body that now will collect our own VAT. While, mind you, majority of the companies that are even in Rivers are mostly operating in Bayelsa. They don't pay their VAT in Bayelsa. They pay in Rivers. So, I mean, this thing is so mixed up. Politics 2023 is around the corner. I know that, but it's more politics than reality.
Well, the argument of Mr. Adegburuwa on this same issue is that looking at the Constitution, the issue of tax, of VAT, he mentioned specifically, is not exclusive to the federal government. It is something that the states, it's on the residual list according to him. He may want to clarify that later on. So essentially he said that it is something within the purview of the states, according to the Constitution, and not the federal government.
Well, I'm not a constitutional expert. I'm not a lawyer. But I think we've been operating this thing for quite some time now. And of course, there is a need for retinkering of it. Perhaps if it is the sharing, or perhaps if it is the law, we need to think how it. But like I told you, there is never anywhere in the world where the subnationals, where the states collect VAT, anywhere in the world. And I mean, why should it happen now? It's just Nigeria because we want to be different. Say, okay, now every state should collect its own. Mind you, the Lagos and Rivers that were saying they have collected more than 50% of the VAT, because the headquarters of the telecoms, the banks, and the what have you are all domiciled in those areas. I mean, like I said earlier, we are all shortchanged in this country. And the earlier the better we fix the system. That's why I believe that with a good leader, things will go right. But now, we don't know where we're going to. The VAT issue, the politics issue, and the what have you. And I do agree that there are other states. You see, it is a reaction of the decision of the southern governors that made the northern governors sat down and took that decision. I think without those hard words, you wouldn't have had the, I'm sorry, I'm not speaking for the northern governors, but perhaps you wouldn't have heard from them. But you see, this is a country, and what affects the person from Bauchi still affects the person in Bayelsa or Lagos. So the issue of VAT being collected by the state, I've never heard of it anywhere, and I think we should sit down and let calm come into us and then see how better we can handle the situation. Then fine, it is good. River State had gone to court, and then they had appealed. Let's wait for the courts to decide. I mean, let's not hit the system too much. Let's allow the court to decide. Whatever the court decide, I think every Nigerian should abide by it.
Well, if there's anything we've seen and learned about Nigeria, is the fact that Nigeria is peculiar in a lot of ways. I mean, what happens in Nigeria, you probably will never find it anywhere in the world. But before I take this back to Mr. Adegburuwa, there's been the conversation around, southern states being shortchanged at the expense of northern states. There's been that conversation. By the way, this is essentially a constitutional issue, and you've referenced the fact that maybe you're not a constitutional lawyer. You've talked about the politics, perhaps. But do you see this as, the response of the northern governors vis-a-vis what we had from the southern governors as a fear from northern states that if states, maybe perhaps the southern states that are pushing for this, Lagos and Rivers, were to collect value-added tax themselves, then that will shortchange northern states when it comes to sharing of the centrally collected VAT? Is that a fear?
Is it big?
Oh, yes, it's for you, Mr. Tafawa Balewa, please.
No, it's not a fair at all. Before VAT, even before in the first republic, where was the resources coming from? Well, that was history. But I mean, you see, the issue here now is, like I said, the whole country is bleeding. Most of the governors are so lazy, they don't think of anywhere to make money for the states. They are only waiting for the federal grants, the VAT, the allocation, and what have you. So with that, most of the states, without those little monies, they can't even pay salaries because they're not proactive, creating wealth. Now, manufacturing is almost gone in northern Nigeria. In my state, hardly can you find 2-3 companies manufacturing. They all come from Lagos. You see, we have to, it's a give and take. It's a give and take. I believe in some other time, maybe time will come when perhaps we will not be thinking about VAT as a serious revenue in the states. But for me, I think that's not a fear from the northern side, but perhaps it's just an indication that, gentlemen, this is one country, this is not 2 or 3 different countries, but we must get our acts right.
Are you saying, by any chance, Mr. Tafawa Balewa, are you saying by any chance that the states are not viable or that the governors are not innovative enough to explore the potential of the states?
Both. I should say both, because it's a combination of both. Most of the states are not viable. They cannot. And again, because of the nature, the Nigerianness in us, the corruption in us. Most of the governors, I don't think if they have any business doing there. They're just there to line in their pockets. They are not thinking 15, 20 years to come. They are just thinking immediate. What do I get? You see them, what they are doing in the country, flying here and there when they can't even pay salaries. So I think it's both, to my own understanding.
So, Mr. Bonlo-Adegborua, I mean, a lot has been said, but when do you think, I mean, you're a lawyer, so we can ask you at least areas of constitution and interpretation. So when do you think the other considerations should come in this whole debate, which of course is at the courts right now? So there's the consideration about, politics, where this is generated from, who owns what. I mean, what is it, the input and the output mechanism, the interstate mechanism. At what point do you think it should come in this conversation? Should it be as we're discussing the issue in the court, or after it has been decided in court, then we can say, okay, let's find a political solution to this one? How do we mix this, really?
Well, unfortunately, the matter in court presently cannot determine the controversies surrounding VAT and revenue share in general. I say that because the subject matter of what is pending in the Court of Appeal presently is the judgment of the Federal High Court in Port Harcourt. After that judgment, Rivers State has enacted a law which is not subject of the appeal pending. Lagos State has enacted a law, and other states are considering enacting their own laws. So even if that judgment gets to the Supreme Court today and is determined one way or the other, it will not affect the laws that have been promulgated by the various states. So that's what I mean by the controversy will continue. So we support Mr. Tafawa Balewa's position that a political solution should be worked out. But my own concern is this. I don't know whether you saw it, Mr. Kawade. There's a letter circulating on the social media, purportedly written by the Federal Inland Revenue Service, as far back as June this year, trying to push the National Assembly into pushing the issue of VAT to the exclusive list. So if that is correct, and that letter has not been denied up to now, if that is correct, it means the federal government itself has considered that, I mean, it was probably not competent to go into that matter. Beyond that, court cases and politics, I believe that this issue of VAT has exposed the hypocrisy of unique federalism that we've been practicing. Because Nigeria is currently running a unitary system of government, and unless we go back to true fiscal federalism, in which the federal government will share the weight and then concentrate power in the people through the regions, the states, and the local government, we'll continue to have this problem. It is true, like Mr. Abubakar said, that the states are not viable. And the reason for their non-viability is because everything that brings revenue is in the hands of the federal government. Oil and gas, admiralty, aviation, railway, custom and excise, import duties, name it, anything that has to do with revenue in Nigeria is in the pocket of the federal government. Nowhere that is done in the entire world where the federal government becomes so powerful as to be the one to determine the future of the other component units. And I think that's what we need to address. And that's my own concern, that it's in the constitution that we must promote federalism. It's in the constitution of APC and PDP that they will promote fiscal federalism. So we should get to that stage whereby we devolve power to the regions. If there is gold in Zamfara, let the people of Zamfara be able to mine the gold for their own prosperity and remit some resources to the federal.
Perhaps
so
which
that
ties back to
capacity
the
will be
point you
built in
made.
each of those states.
Right, which ties back to the point you made that, I mean, this is just scratching the surface of the conversation. But quickly, I want to get clarification on the point you raised about the laws that have been promulgated in Lagos and Rivers, saying it's not subject of appeal. Are you saying those laws stand and they are enforceable as we speak right now?
Oh, yes. With all due respect, an appeal will only decide what is pending before that court. And the appeal that is currently pending in the Court of Appeal is against the judgment of the Federal High Court. That judgment has nothing to do with the laws promulgated by Rivers State and Lagos State, respectively. So that's why I said that even if the Supreme Court decides this case, it will still not end the controversy concerning value-added tax.
All right, so well, as we wind down on this conversation, Mr. Tafawa Balewa, what would you be expecting the people to do in this regard? My colleague asked the other time, why we have the Northern Governors Forum and the Southern Governors Forum, we don't have the Northern People's Forum where they can also come up with a communique and make their opinions known, nor do we have the Southern People's Forum as well. How do you, if you, as you say, you believe that the people have been shortchanged, how then do the people begin to redeem themselves?
Well, I mean, this is a, a $1 million question. But of course, you know, the governors in all our states are the alpha and omega today. They control the resources. They allow the people to organize themselves in the way they want. But of course, it's quite different. What obtains in the northern part of the country is quite different from the southern part of the country. I think the people should come together. Now, let's see, what do we want after 61 years of independence? What do we want? Do we want to remain the way we are? Everybody's suffering, crisis everywhere. What do we want? Let's tell ourselves, and then from there we begin to know what we need to do in order to, I mean, there are good moments in this country. I knew when things were okay and everybody was okay. But at the moment, things are not good for almost everybody, perhaps except the governors or people in power. The people should rise up from now onwards. Don't put in a leader from the local government to state who you think you are putting there based on your ethnic or tribal leanings. Put a leader who is going to be there and work for you. Who will be there, not only work for you, but work for the entire country. Because there is always a problem when you have a leader who only sees his people as past before others. That's where you begin to have this problem. When you want to bring about change, he resists change or whatever. People should come up, propose solutions. See to it that we begin to elect leaders who are genuine, who have the love of the people at heart. If we don't do that, I'm sorry, it will continue because the same cycle. My colleague here was saying that there was a circular going around that they went to the National Assembly. I mean, the governors and the National Assembly, they are virtually almost the same. Hardly can they want anything from the National Assembly and they won't get. But I mean, why should it be so? Why should it be so? Let's open this discussion. I've always said, let's deepen this discussion so that we can now come up with a solution. But when we just scratch it and go, I mean, it will come back tomorrow.
Okay.
Wike has started. Yeah.
All right. Well, we have to thank you very much, gentlemen, for being a part of our conversation this morning. It definitely is an ongoing one, and hopefully we'll be able to have
I wanted to state to you, Ayo, that we have People's Forum. Nigerian People's Forum exists through Sunrise Television and other national televisions, through social media. And that's why Nigeria should bring back Twitter. That is the Nigerian People's Forum. Nigerian people have their own forum where they express themselves, and the government should lift the suspension on Twitter and let Nigerian people express themselves as southern governors and northern governors are doing.
Well, hopefully we'll be able to have the communique of the people as well on this matter. But I have to thank you very much for your appearances today, gentlemen. Abubakar Bile Tafawa Balewa is a politician and rights activist, as well as Ebonolu Adegboruwa, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria. Thank you, gentlemen, for being a part of our conversation this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're back after now to take on another issue. To stay with us.